To satisfy your inquisitive minds, we have included bonus topics in every chapter. In this chapter, that is chapter 1, we'll look at some bonus topics which includes some functions that we have already seen but being used in a different way, and also some features like preferences and display formats. Let's look at the whos function. We already know what whos function does. So when I say whos and hit return, it displays all variables in the current session along with their characteristics. But we can also use whos command to specifically ask for one or more variables. Let's say I just want to see the variable and characteristics of ASDF and let's say X and Y. So it displays the characteristics of only those variables that you are querying for. Let me create a few more variables to help me show what I want to show with the whos function. Let's say ABC equals to 3, AWS equals to 8. I'm randomly choosing the variable names, but of course with some pattern. Now let me show you what else we can do with the whos command. I can query for all the variables starting with let's say A using a wild character asterisk. So when I do whos and A asterisk, that means I'm asking whos function to show me all the variables that have A and then something else. That something else could be anything, which is denoted by the wild character asterisk. So that shows me all the variables in my workspace which start with A. Now if I want to query for all the variables which start with let's say Z, I say who Z star. Or if I want to query for all the variables that either start with Z or with A, I would do this. So there is only one variable that starts with Z, which is Z itself. I can also query for a particular pattern of alphabets or characters appearing in a variable. For example, I want to list out all the variables that have BC, the combination of characters BC, somewhere in the name. So I'm using two asterisks here, which means I want to see all variables which have BC in their name, and the BC could be anywhere in the name. So there could be something in the beginning and then BC and something in the end on those variables. So these are all the variables which have BC somewhere in the name. Likewise, I can query for all the variables which end in Z by using the asterisk character, the wild character, at the beginning. So these are all my variables that end in Z. Feel free to explore more on how this wild character works, and you can also try the same thing on clear function. Now, we have already seen that you can use clear function to clear specifically targeted variables. For example, let me try and clear the variables B, K, and X. So only these three variables will be deleted from workspace. I can also do clear using the wild character, so I can delete all variables starting with A. So now you should see all the three variables that start with A deleted from workspace. There you go. Likewise, I can do a clear with star BC star. So this should delete me the two variables BC and BCD from my workspace. There you go. Clear is a very generic and powerful command that can be used to clear variables, functions, classes. It can be used to unload libraries, etc. And clearvars, clearvars, is a function specifically meant to clear variables. And you can use clearvars function just like the clear command to delete all variables from workspace, but this is especially handy if you have to delete all your workspace variables except for one or two. So I can use clearvars function in this manner. Clearvars except, except, let's say y and xyz. So I want to delete all my variables except for these two variables y and xyz, and you should be able to see that except these two variables, everything will be gone. Let me hit return and keep watching the workspace. There you go. Let's now look at preferences using which you can change the desktop fonts. Let's now look at preferences using which you can change the fonts and colors in Matlab. Now to open preferences window, you go to tooltip and click on the preferences icon. If you're using version 7, you should be able to find preferences in the file menu on menu bar. Click on fonts, and here you can change your fonts and the font sizes of command window. For example, let me increase this to 15 and you should be able to see my font getting bigger. All right. And you can also change the fonts used in other windows like current folder and workspace using this section. Click on colors and you should be able to see the colors used by Matlab in these windows. You can change the desktop colors. For example, you can make the text look in a color other than black by using the color palette here. And if you think the white background of Matlab is little too strainful for your eyes, you can choose a neutral background like gray. I strongly recommend you not to change the colors in this section. Click on the preferences for command window, and at the very top you see options for numeric format. Using these settings, you can change how numbers appear in your command window. The default numeric display format is short, but you can change it to one of the other formats like long. Short format always displays 4 digits after your decimal point. Long will display 15 digits after decimal point. The E option on short and long will display the numbers in floating point format, which means you will always see it in the scientific format with some exponent appearing beside number. G option will either show you a scientific format or the regular format without any exponent appearing, depending upon whichever is more concise. E and G option gives you the engineering format, which is the exponent or the scientific format with the exponent always appearing in multiples of 3. And then you have other formats like hexadecimal format and bank option. In the bank option, you always see 2 digits after decimal. And then you have rational format, which is showing the numbers in the P by Q form. I always prefer short G option. And the numeric display is by default loose, which means whenever you see numbers, you will always see an extra line feed so that it's little more easier to read in the command window. And if you choose compact, the extra line feeds are removed. I'll keep this setting at loose. Feel free to explore other preferences over here. You can also change the numeric display format by using the format command, format, and give an option, format short. So that sets your numeric display format to be fixed point where your pi would appear in this way. Or if I say some x equals to 8.5, that would appear as 8.5000. The difference in the display with format short G would be When I say x equals to 8.5, I just see 8.5 rather than 8.5 with 3 trailing zeros. If I format with short e, you'd see this in scientific format with an exponent. Feel free to explore with format long E, long G, etc. And also look up the documentation on the format command. Let's now see what user path is. When we discussed current folder, I mentioned that the default current folder is document/MATLAB. So when you start MATLAB, your current folder is always document/MATLAB. You can change this setting such that any folder of your choice can be the startup MATLAB folder. Let's see how to make that. You have what is called as user path. Type user path in command window and hit return. You will see the current user path as document/MATLAB, of course, which is inside your home directory. What you can do is overwrite this user path to any folder of your choice. For example, I can set my user path to be users/blank/desktop/project1, which was a folder we created earlier. So that becomes your user path. You can now query for the user path and it should show you the new path that you have set it to. And when you close MATLAB and reopen it, it will be starting up in the new startup folder you have mentioned. So this is how you can change the default startup folder of MATLAB. If you're on Windows, there is another way you can do this. Whenever you create a shortcut icon for MATLAB, you can right-click on the icon to go to Properties and change the startup folder for that icon. That way you could be creating multiple icons with multiple startup folders, and whenever you open MATLAB using one of those icons, MATLAB will be starting up using the startup folder mentioned in the properties of that particular icon as its current folder. So that completes our bonus topics for chapter 1.